You're listening to Men's Radio Station. If you're unfortunate enough, you're also watching us. Hello, I'm Russ Kane, and this is the ABC of CBD. The reason it always puts a smile on my face, one, I'm always delighted to see Ollie Mammon, because he's just a larger-than-life force of nature. And two, because we're living where every day is Blur's Day, no one knows what day it is. The only way I can get a grip on my week, I know it's Thursday, if I see Ollie's little face. Then we're okay. That's the only way I can work out my weeks, because otherwise it could be Easter, Christmas Day, or New Year's Eve. I don't know. Everyone's the same. We're coming at you absolutely. It is. Oh, it's worse than Groundhog Day. It's even worse. At least Bill Murray could get out and to go to a bar and go to have a drink,
learn to play piano and learn to play piano and learn things about people and without them knowing it,
Yes, and rob a bank successfully and pull. I've forgotten her name. She was very pretty.
Didn't he kill himself like 4 times in that movie? It got really dark at one moment. It got really dark.
It got exceptionally dark. Angela Lee, good evening, I should say. Good evening, and hello to everybody. I know people listen and watch all over the world. Ollie, as always, at this point, I'm merely, as I like to say, a passenger. Over to you.
So today's episode is called Growing Economic Stability. It's a story about the Isle of Man. We have a company joining us, actually a representative of a company, a guy called Alex Frey from Grow Lab Organics. Now, before we move into the episode and we get, basically a full education on as to what's actually going on in the Isle of Man, let's play the little words from our sponsor, and then I'll give my little introduction and I'll bring out my guest and the usual, but sponsor now. I'm sure you've heard before that good quality CBD needs to be really, really expensive. This is the new view of CBD, a product created by users for users, a product at an affordable price, available everywhere, at any time, at the simple click of a button. Just CBD and MCT oil. No additives, no preservatives, and no flavor enhancers. It's a simple subscription-based service. The cleanest possible CBD delivered to your door for the lowest possible price. Your product, your rights for the lowest possible price. Love it.
That's great. It's so cool, isn't it? I always thank God you can't see me, because I always do a kind of little dance to that bit.
Just a little woo.
I do a kind of. I'll be honest with you, Ollie. I throw some shapes.
Do you actually? You cut in shapes there?
I
love it.
I do. I'm just so down with the kids. It's terrifying. Good evening to Lee Durnford. I hope you two are in communication.
Yeah, I've been chatting to Lee.
That's fantastic. What a terrific guy he is. Sorry, Ollie, back to you, fella.
Brilliant. So today our guest is a guy called Alex Frey. Now, Alex Frey, I'm going to say this because Ross liked this before. Alex Frey is the man with the plan from the Isle of Man. Okay. Basically, he has a company. It's called Grow Lab Organics. Grow Lab Organics, I actually met them maybe 2-3 years ago. So it's been a journey. Do you know what I mean? It's not, they haven't just invented themselves yesterday. They've been around for a while, and it's been progressive, this entire plan of theirs. Now, this whole subject is something where I know a bit about it, but I mean, the show is also to educate myself, so I'm very excited for today. The Isle of Man has recently had a vote about laws around cannabis and the laws around what the Isle of Man will be doing with cannabis, and there was a fantastic response from the population. So the Isle of Man is moving into the world of cannabis. How it's doing it exactly, Alex will tell us. But the main thing is I really wanted to kind of get an understanding of the Isle of Man as well. You know, from what I know, the Isle of Man has probably changed its economic direction maybe 7 times in the last 70 years. You know, I've heard it's had a history in tourism, a history of shipping, a history of mining, along with so many other things. What's that?
Motorbiking.
See, like I said, I don't know that much about the Isle of Man.
Oh, I've been there.
But I do know that, unfortunately, in recent years, the economic climate there has not been that great. The economic infrastructure has been struggling. Now, we've called this episode Growing Economic Stability, because could the Isle of Man save itself with this adoption of a you could call medicinal cannabis, economic culture. Could there be a trick up its sleeve? Could this be the future for a small island, which unfortunately at this moment of time is suffering? And I wanted to kind of get to the bottom of this. Could cannabis theoretically save, a country? Could it save a territory? And it could be a great conversation. I also want to get into get into a basic understanding of what the plan is for the Isle of Man, what the rules are on the Isle of Man. And Alex has had this incredible relationship dealing with, the Home Office, dealing with MHRA, dealing with government officials in the Isle of Man. He's got this incredible understanding for this entire process. And I'll be honest with you, I wanted to learn more as well. So
now I have a question for you.
Go on.
When you've been chatting to your guest, Alex,
yes,
did you ask him the all-important question? When he goes over a certain little bridge on the Isle of Man, does he say, "Good morning, fairies," in the morning, and "Good evening, fairies," at night? You think I'm making it up? I'm not.
Are there fairies on the Isle of Man?
I was doing business on the Isle of Man many years ago, and I was in suit and tie, and everybody I'm with in this car, they'd pick me up from the hotel or wherever, and everyone's in a suit and tie. We're driving along to a particular factory, right? We go over this little bridge, little tiny bridge and little wiggly road, and everyone else in the car goes, "Good morning, fairies." And I thought, I have gone into a parallel universe here. Serious.
So it's like in
ask Alex.
So it's like in the Scandinavian countries, they still believe in like the elves and stuff, don't they? So because I think it's pretty cool. I kind of like that. Plus, just to let everyone know, I went on a little forest walk with my dog recently, and across this forest walk, I saw loads of little doors, and trust me, I followed them. Okay, I know it's like a little kid's puzzle and whatever, but I went looking for the elves. So like there were these tiny little doors at the bottom of these trees, and I was like, hold on, there's something here. There's something here. So I went for this little wander, and I spotted maybe 60 of these doors, and I waited to see if so I'm not saying I'm a believer, but I'm not saying I don't believe. Now Alex is probably going to come on and say, "Russ, you're mental." But I mean, let's see what you have to say.
What can I say? That's what happened.
Listen, he's going to educate us so much more than I can on this subject. So let's just bring on Alex Frey.
All right, let's go.
Good morning, fairy.
Good evening, fairies. Russ, you are correct. There is a fairy bridge, and
in your face, Ollie Mammoth. In your face.
Oh, it hurts. It hurts. It hurts. It actually hurts. I've just laughed myself into a spasm. Oh,
Alex,
God. Right, carry on.
Alex, where is the bridge? Do you know where the bridge is? It's in my head, but I didn't catch the name.
It's just by the airport, actually. So it's down in the south of the island, near a place called Balasala. And yes, people do that, and I don't do that. I've only been here 7 years, but my children would do that. So, and it is very common for adults to do that as well. And you're also right. There's a sort of folklore connection with Scandinavia, with the sort of elves and fairies, and actually there's some Scandinavian people who've come over and put these kind of fairy houses hidden around the island, and it's like a kind of trail. So bang on, well done,
but I had no idea that there was an affiliation. Okay, I just know that Scandinavian people have that, but that's really cool. I now have to come and visit you, by the way, as I don't even care about the facility you're building. I want to come meet the fairies. That's what I want to do. But anyway, different conversation, different day.
And Alex, can I just say one thing? And forgive me, then Ollie, I'm going to shut up.
No, go ahead, Ross. Do your thing.
But when I went to the Isle of Man, I went there a few times, as I said, on business, and the roads are little tiny B roads. And when you think professional motorbike riders are doing nearly 200 miles an hour now, nearly 200 miles an hour on a motorbike on a road where I would be changing my trousers doing like 30 miles an hour, it's incredible.
In a car?
It's only in a car. It's only when you see it. Alex will get it because you've lived there, as you say, 7 years. But when you see it, you think, that can't be right. It's extraordinary. It really is. Until you see it, you don't appreciate the skill of those guys. Anyway, Isle of Man, lovely. There we go.
Are his observations right?
So the TT is an iconic race, and people travel from all over the world to watch it. So the population of the Isle of Man is about 85,000 people. And every year when the TT's on, you get 40,000 people from all over the world come for this race.
Amazing.
Where it's it is incredibly dangerous. It is quite a spectacle. The riders are incredibly skillful and brave, So some of the best motorbike riders in the world, they come to watch. Like Valentino Rossi came to watch and rode round slowly. He was like, these guys are just so brave. I would never be able to do it. And yeah, it's amazing. It's if you're going to, well, Ollie, I hope you do come and visit, and you should tie in with the first week of June, which is when TT is as well. And Russ, if you fancy a trip back,
oh well, man,
very welcome.
I'd love to see it. The thing that stunned me, and then we're going to get onto Ollie's subject, and I was watching some YouTube stuff on this, and it's the people who've never been there. I've never been to the TT races, so they've got their camera and they assume they can track it. When somebody comes past 180, 100, 200 miles an hour on a motorbike, their faces are just like, because it's literally whoosh, it's that quick. Yeah. It's incredible to watch.
Because it's such a long course, people you can stand pretty much on the side of the road, and at certain parts of the track, you can feel the air move as the bikes go past. I've seen people fall over out of shock when the bike goes past. They just fall backwards.
Incredible. So the 1st to the 7th of June, I'm coming to stay.
But, yeah, 2022, unfortunately, because
that's fine. Corona. So look, I wanted to kind of move into the show. I wanted to, like I said, I've got a few questions built out, but they're very broad questions. If you want to kind of like a tangent at any moment, by all means do it. I've got votes for the Isle of Man now, and props for the Isle of Man just because of the fairies. I mean, if cannabis can, if cannabis can survive anywhere in the world, it's in a world where it's blessed by fairies.
The Isle of Man.
Just throwing it out there. So it's got my thumbs up. But basically, let's start. Why the Isle of Man? As in, like, why did you choose to set up GLO there? Okay, because one thing you said is very similar between English rules and Isle of Man rules. They're very similar. So why would you choose the Isle of Man over, let's say, part of the connected Great Britain territories?
Yeah, so the Isle of Man is part of Great Britain, but it's got its own government and it has the ability to set its own laws. But traditionally, it is very, very closely aligned with the UK. So I happen to live here. I moved here 7 years ago, and I was looking. I obviously had a real passion for this sector and this industry, and was looking for opportunities for the Isle of Man as well, because something that you touched on in the introduction, Ollie, is that the Isle of Man has to constantly reinvent itself. So I don't think people here think that cannabis is going to save the island, but there is absolutely an acknowledgement that we need to reinvent ourselves, because as many small jurisdictions do, particularly with globalization, your competitive advantage of one thing tends to get eroded and you need to do something new. So yes, it was mining and shipping. Incidentally, hemp was grown for the ropes and the sails of the shipping industry.
When was this?
Oh, this was 100 years ago.
Yeah, so we're talking about like end of the 1800s, so like 1880s, 1890s, Victorian time type thing. Yeah.
Yeah. The 1800s, there was probably the heyday of shipping, and yeah, they used to use hemp as an input to the textiles in that industry. And then more recently, tourism, financial services, e-gaming, all those sort of things. And really, the long-term advantage for someone like the Isle of Man is to be legislatively agile, to create niches that are legally aligned with the UK, but to create something that's a bit more business-friendly. And it's not just the Isle of Man that does this. This is Jersey, Guernsey, Gibraltar, other places outside of the British Crown dependencies as well. So places like Malta tends to be small jurisdictions, have to be creative to adapt and move with the changes in the global economy. So cannabis, I could see the trend that was happening around the world, and I thought it was something that could be done very well here because of the track record of strong but transparent regulation and pragmatic and business-friendly government.
Also, the agricultural infrastructure, which already exists there, so they're not afraid of farming as well, which has got to be kind of, you're not going to go grow in the middle of the desert where they've never grown something before. The fact that they've got, agricultural experience, even if it's historical, it means that the ground must also be workable.
Yeah, so and there's plenty of space as well. It's only 30 miles by 15, but with a population of 85,000, it's got low population density. So there's space for farming, whether it's outdoors or whether it's indoor cultivation, which is what we're talking about. And we actually do grow hemp in the UK as well. We've got 3 industrial hemp licenses, which we've had for a couple of years.
Amazing.
But it's not just me that made this observation. There was a public consultation in March 2019, and this consultation had it was about cannabis regulations and reform generally, and it had the second highest response of any public consultation ever in the Isle of Man, and it was 99.2% in favour of some kind of reform. Now, within that, there were different people who had different views of what that reform should look like, but it was overwhelmingly in favour of changing the status quo.
Incredible.
I find that quite extraordinary in the light that I remember that when people would arrive at the Isle of Man on the ferry, they were handed, especially during the Isle of Man TT, and particularly if there was ever concerts and stuff, that there was corporal punishment if you broke the law.
When was this, Russ? How many years?
1803.
I bet Russ is old as hell, man. He like he sailed on the Mayflower over to the United States and planted the flag there.
That's That's my local pub. Don't knock the Mayflower, my friend. Don't. Captain of the Mayflower is buried less than half a mile from where I live. No, it was my younger brother. Actually, was the idiot. That was, I don't know. It must have been in the 70s, I guess.
Okay.
I guess in the 70s. And Alex, would you say hello all the way to Spain to Chrissy Holt, who's saying hello to you? So Chrissy Holt, hello to
Chrissy.
You from right. Okay, so that's that. Okay.
Question. So this, you said that they had this vote. All right, what was the umbrella over this vote? And because it's not just, is it like, was it a vote to consume cannabis? Was it a vote to produce cannabis? Was it a vote for the economy to get involved in cannabis? Like these votes happen all the time. But and I know you said it was like different, like different groupings as to why. But I mean, like, what was the umbrella above it? Like what was the proposition regarding, you could say?
So it was fairly broad, but there was 2 main themes. One was about developing a new economic sector, so allowing the business of cannabis to be based within the Isle of Man. But then there was also a theme running through it about patient access, and the responses were all published as well. So it's a very transparent process, and it was overwhelmingly in favour of reform of some description, but obviously people have different views on how things should unfold at what pace and that sort of thing. But it was a big sort of green flag, green light for the government to push forward with this initiative.
Amazing. So I mean, that's pretty cool that the people have kind of taken it into their own hands, and this is what they've chosen. I mean, like, considering we've got, they could build a Silicon Valley and try and attract the tech world, or like there are things they could do. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of nice that they opted for cannabis. Do you know what I mean? I kind of like that. I think it's kind of it shows a lot of hope from the population and a lot of support from the population. And to be honest with you, if the population is going to support something, there's more chance it's going to end up being something viable, as opposed to the population fighting it at every left and right turn. You're more likely to have a failure from any business opportunity if everyone's basically picket lining you and telling you to go back to London and take your weed with you. So I mean, like, it's kind of good that you've got that support from the local community. When did you start planning on moving to the? When did you start planning on this Isle of Man play? When did GLO? Like, was it in 2019 or was it before the vote?
It was before. So I was considering this at the back end of 2017 and really starting putting the idea together in more detail in 2018. And I've been full-time working in the business for more than 18 months now, with 2 business partners who have got a very different background to me. And so we've been working on this for a long time, And
well, I met you guys like 2 years ago, like 26 months ago or something, because it was definitely more than 14 months ago, because 14 months ago was COVID. And I met you guys way before COVID, because I remember I met you guys in restaurants, which is something I have not done in years.
See, now you're getting technical. You've lost.
I sat next to this dude and had a coffee in a public place. I mean,
no,
you can tell your kids about, man.
This is ridiculous. You're just making this up now.
I promise you,
this
my
is the ramblings of fantasy.
My mouth to God's ears. We took sugar from the same pot. Fact. Mental.
No, that's just ridiculous.
It's pretty cool, isn't it, as well, that, like Alex and his team. By the way, everyone else in Alex's team is called Charlie. There's like 17 Charlies and an Alex. It's pretty awesome. So it's easy to remember all of their names.
Are they seriously all called Charles?
All 2 of them, not 17.
I exaggerate a lot, guys. Come on.
Do you? I've told you a million times never to exaggerate.
That's the co-founders, but obviously there's more people, and they're not all called Charlie.
It's very cool that you predicted that, though. It's pretty cool, no? Like you decided to plant your flag in a place which actually supports your flag being planted there. I mean, that's pretty impressive. I just want to say, just from a premonition type of perspective, it's very cool.
Yeah, well, I think that if you look at the world and you look at cannabis law, and over the last 20 years, it's like a wave sweeping the world. And so, this is happening all over Europe, and it's happened in Jersey and Guernsey, similar time to the Isle of Man. There's policy reform in the UK as well, and obviously there's a tension in sort of how quickly it's happening and in what way it's happening, and there's lots and lots of strong opinions. And maybe that's something that's worth getting into. But I think. I would love to say it's down to my clairvoyance that it was great planning, but this is a global theme. It's a global trend, and Pandora's box is well and truly open now. So it's just a case of how and at what pace it unfolds.
So let's carry on. Tell us a bit about the process. So like what's been the process of, laying ground, you could say, as in like over the last few years, what have you actually, done? And then what I want to talk about a bit as well, because it makes me smile, is you're one of the only people I know who talks about basically everyone who drives you mental in this industry, and you talk about them all with respect for understanding why they drive you mental. And you're the only person I know who speaks positively about literally everyone. And you have this incredible empathy for the patients and Home Office and MHRA and government officials and doctors and everyone who has their own opinion, who doesn't seem to agree with anyone else. You seem to have incredible empathy for them and incredible understanding as to why they're in the position they're in. Now, one thing you have done is you've worked very closely with all of these government bodies, to the point where you're actually getting things done. And, these government bodies are, what's it called? They're dealing with something brand new that they've never had to deal with before. And of course, it's an overwhelming, daunting task. We made the joke 3 weeks ago about Jenny from the Home Office, and about Jenny from the Home Office literally gets all of these emails and all of these calls about something she knows nothing about. I don't know if Jenny actually exists, but you know what I mean,
like a broom closet.
That's it. Just like literally going over all of this cannabis, all of these cannabis applications, not really knowing what to do. And you actually made a beautiful point of, it's important to empathize with all of these sides. So I want you to kind of go into that a little bit, talk about the process you've gone into, explain, how much everyone's a pain in the ass and why you understand exactly why they are that pain in the ass, because it's important, because there's so much blame in this industry. They won't let me do this or they won't let me do that. But at the end of the day, it's important to take the side of understanding why they prohibit you from taking those necessary steps. And it's important to take a little bit like George Thomas last week. He's this incredible, well-educated man who just understands that, these hoops are there for the protection of everyone. And if you can kind of see it that way, you get them better, and you have the same mentality. So go on, talk for 5 minutes about the process and MHRA and patients and doctors and regulators and all of that.
Cool. So I think the first point is, cannabis in the UK, cannabis in Great Britain it's a medicinal market. So it's a very tightly regulated market. And so there are different regulators as well. So the MHRA is the Medicines and Healthcare Product Regulatory Agency. And so any pharmaceutical company will need to be regulated by the MHRA. And that's Boots the Chemist, GSK, through to biotech drug development companies and medicinal cannabis companies. And depending on which bit of the cannabis supply chain you're in, you might need a different license as well. So there's that side of it, and those regulations are, they're very well established. There's a rule book about that thick called UDREX Volume 4, and you have to comply with it, whatever area you're in. You also mentioned the Home Office, and so the Home Office regulate controlled drug licenses, and specifically cannabis licenses. So they are another stakeholder in the process that, again, there are a set of rules that they are implementing and managing, and you have to engage constructively with all of the stakeholders in this process. And each regulator will be looking at different things. So the medical regulator is looking mainly at safety and efficacy, whereas the Home Office, and when I say the Home Office, it'll be in every European country, it'll be a different name, but it'll be a government department that will be concerned with lots of things, but a big one will be security, because you've got a legal market and an illegal market, and they're worried about
crossover,
the lines becoming blurred and crossover. And then there's other stakeholders as well, like the police. And so the chief of police here on the Isle of Man is very open-minded and progressive. But
that's lucky. That's so lucky, because that's another thing. The police have this unwritten code of laws. So someone else I was speaking to said, look, they're the hardest people to work with, because the Home Office give you what you need to follow. It might be like a trip to the moon and back, but it is doable. And then the MHRA, they have these laws. So marketing authorization, you have to apply for marketing authorization. You have to apply for the process to be able to, you have to apply for the process and the license to be able to do what you have to do. They're hoops of fire, but they are jumpable. The police have this blanket, you could call it powers of analysis, and they can walk in and be like, I just don't think that's right. And the I don't think that's right is not really something you can work with. So it's incredible you've got a police commissioner who actually, because, police don't have a rule book. They are the rule book. So, I mean, I think it's incredible that you've got a supportive police commissioner. I think that's probably one of the saving graces of the island, because, I like that, the island, it kind of gives them, it gives this ability for the Isle of Man to potentially actually, rocket ship this idea, as opposed to every jurisdiction in the UK. You've got your own police commissioner who's terrified about those blurred lines. Those blurred lines are literally not controllable. Like in inner city suburbia, you can't take those risks. So I kind of like the fact you've got that police commissioner who's progressive, as you used the word.
So he would probably argue that he does have a rule book, because he actually says that he can't choose the laws to implement. But when you come to enforcement, there are it is inconsistent between different areas of the country in the UK. That's for sure. But I guess the point that I was trying to make here is with the regulators, who are often painted as the pantomime villain of the cannabis conversation, and people are very frustrated with them. For the large majority of it, the people that are seen to be putting roadblocks in front of you, they're not doing it intentionally. And this isn't a new process for cannabis in many situations. And you have to. We've always tried to embrace the regulators. Oh, by the way, we're going through a regulatory process, so that's ongoing, rather than we're through and building the facility. That will be next. And then if you look at, I see that you've got sort of broadly three different stakeholder groups. One is the regulators, which encompasses lots of different organisations. The second one is the patients, and normally we start with the patients, because we're very much a patient-focused organisation, and we are doing research, talking to patients about their current experience with medicinal cannabis, and what's working well, what's not working for them. And when you talk to people, it's so easy to empathise with people that are going through quite often really traumatic circumstances, and they have something which they know helps them, or they believe can help them, and they're struggling for access. And there's lots of examples of this that get reported in the papers, with which are really powerful examples. But I mean, I talk to pretty much everyone I meet. I will weave in cannabis to the conversation, and I've met people from all walks of life. I've met an 84-year-old man who was buying cannabis illegally and set up a chemistry laboratory in his garage to make oil to give to his sick wife, aged 80, and it helped her. And he did this, and it was a really touching story. And then I've met a managing director of multiple banks who was buying cannabis illegally to self-medicate for a condition that he had. And then you meet there's people from every walk of life. There isn't a specific type of person that is using cannabis, and the stereotype of people using cannabis as the stereotypical stoner is a lazy stereotype that's not true.
Yeah,
it cuts across all areas of society, and I think talking to patients is one of the most powerful things, to actually hear firsthand stories, and they get sometimes this is a source of tension, because these are real stories, these are real experiences, but they're being reported in a way that doesn't fit within a clinical study, and so they often feel that they're not being listened to. And when you consider the numbers of the patients that are gaining therapeutic value from cannabis, they're huge. And so it's
incredible, isn't it? What they're like. So the basic figure is there's like 1.5 to 1.8 million active illegal black market cannabis users on the market. I personally think, I mean, just from my experience, my numbers, my head, it's not enough. As in, like, because the problem is that's a very much a current it's a current figure, as opposed to at moments in my life I have, or at moments in my life I will. And if you were to take in the entire, the lifespan of someone's life, right now, Russ, would you say you're an active cannabis user?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No.
But you use CBD drops every single day.
Not every day, but I certainly use them.
So therefore,
Definitely.
You're an active cannabis user. And that's where I come in. So you've got 1.5 million people.
Exciting.
1.5 million people who are actively open about their consumption. But you probably have something like, 25 million people who probably will have, or future will, you know what I mean? Like have done in the past, will at this present, or will in the future use. I mean, like, so it brings the numbers right up. And a lot of people, if they use something once and never use it again, but they help that one time, they won't remember being an active user, but they're still an active user. Like active doesn't mean active. Active means has actively used. And it's important. It's important to understand that mentality, and it's important to understand those figures. Sorry, I tangented. My bad. Sorry, carry on.
No, it's good. And that figure of 1.5 million, that comes from a really big study in the UK, and it's actually consistent with what we see around the world, that 3% of the population is using cannabis medicinally when it's illegal, and then when it becomes legalized and access improves, that number grows. And you're right, Ollie. There's people that use cannabis-based products but don't consider it cannabis because it's CBD, and there's people that will use it for a period of time in their life and then not, that distort the number. So the true number probably is bigger and is likely to grow.
It's the demonization comment, isn't it? Like one of the first things we ever said on this show is about understanding that the Latin word for hemp is cannabis sativa. You look at any botanical-based research done on the hemp plant, it's always referred to as cannabis sativa. That's what the name of the plant is. So it's about removing the stigma and the demonization, removing this negative affiliation to a compound which you are probably actively already using, which just without knowing you're using it. So it's just so it's different mindset. Sorry again.
And if you want to look into I like looking at words and etymology as well. So if you want to look at this, so that the human body has the endocannabinoid system, which produces cannabinoids itself within you, and one of them is called anandamide, and the root of the word anandamide is ananda, from Sanskrit meaning bliss. So This is a plant. Well, that's obviously endogenous rather than from a plant, but these cannabinoid compounds are known to have a positive effect on the body, even when it's not from the plant. But yeah, back to the sort of stakeholders. So you talk to patients, you cannot help but be moved by the stories and by their plight to have improved access. And then you come on to sort of the third broad stakeholder group, and it's the clinicians. And the clinicians, again, like regulators, sometimes there's frustration aimed at them from people looking from the outside or from patients, because they're seen by some people to be not giving access as easily as they should do. But here I think it's really important to look at the position of the clinicians, how they fit into the equation. In Great Britain, the NHS is very closely aligned with NICE guidelines. So the NICE guidelines govern what is an appropriate therapy for different conditions, and they're currently very restrictive for cannabis, which is why the market is evolving in the private sector rather than within the NHS. There's very few conditions where the NHS will currently prescribe cannabis. And then you say, well, why is that? And the reason, different people have different views on this, but the reason that I see is that NICE guidelines are heavily influenced by a specific type of evidence, which is RCT, so randomized controlled trials that are double-blind placebo clinical trials that take a very long time and cost a lot of money and are typically easier to do for individual molecules than they are for a combination of molecules, because it just gets really complicated to isolate that cause-effect relationship, especially with cannabis, where you've got cannabinoid receptors throughout the body and particularly densely in the central nervous system. So I can't remember the exact figures, but there's more cannabinoid receptors in the brain than most other types of receptor. So it can have that's why it can affect different people in different ways, because there's cannabinoid receptors in every organ in the body, and so it's difficult to fit that into the gold standard of research that NICE guidelines like, which is clinical trials. The fact is, there's actually been 35,000 studies, more than 35,000 studies with cannabis that are peer-reviewed papers that are published on PubMed. That's huge. And 10% of those were done in the last 12 months. And 2/3 of those were done in the last decade. So you can see that whilst there might not be lots of clinical trials, there is a huge evidence base and it's growing. And this is going to give, I believe, organizations like NICE the confidence to improve the pathways. Now, that's of no consolation to somebody that needs cannabis right now and currently can't get it. But I am very optimistic that access will improve as research increases and as education increases.
See, I like to see things from both sides. Now, I've just had this realization in my mind, this little thought which keeps on popping up. If these rules weren't in place, there's no one to say that a free system would be any better. Okay, because I just had this little moment. I was like, an unregulated system, a system without any regulation, without any laws, and a little bit like Cowboy Wild Wild West, doesn't leave the patient in a better position. It doesn't, because there's nothing to say that the patient will be getting something which they actually need. I know this process is taking a long time, but there is part of me, don't get me wrong, I know that a lot of people who know what they're looking for can find what they need on the black market. But what about when you don't know what you're looking for? What about when you're like every 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid who goes to the bigger boys in school and can I buy some weed? And they get sold a torn tea bag, or they get sold oregano. Do you know what I mean? Theoretically, I'm not saying it happens all the time, but it does happen. And I'm saying people get conned in life all the time. Maybe regulation, and strict regulation is not a bad thing, because that's another thing, these regulators must be absolutely terrified. Most of them probably aren't avid cannabis users because they work in that system. So I can't imagine them being those types of, they're not going to be people like me. Do you know what I mean? I can't imagine me being a home office worker. Can you imagine me being a home office worker? Exactly. And I'm just thinking like maybe their reservedness isn't so terrible. You know, like it's important to see things from other side. I get it from the patient's perspective too, but maybe you're, because you brought it up to me as well, and it's just clicked. It's like, maybe it's protecting. Do you know what I mean? Maybe it's the way.
It's interesting, Ollie, because this resonates with a comment from Lee Durnford, which says the MHRA is so important for this. Amongst other things, they license the labs that manufacture chemotherapy drugs.
They license everything. It's marketing authorization.
And to also to expand the point you're making, which I think is a very clever point, Ollie, and it hadn't occurred to me, so I think it's great, that when you go on to the internet and even YouTube, excuse me, you are inundated with people, you know, wearing white lab coats. So you think, oh, they must know what they're doing. And they're selling every type of snake oil you could possibly, I mean, it's junk. But it sounds so convincing, and the slides look marvelous, and the graphics look great, and you're going to lose your belly fat like that, and you're going to lose weight like that, and it's all nonsense. I mean, most of it, I would say, 80% is rubbish. I think you're absolutely right.
It's just a little thought which has never really occurred to me, because I know what I'm doing. So because I know what I'm doing, I never really think about, well, what if you're dealing with someone who doesn't know what they're doing? That doesn't run through my mind because I know what I'm doing. But actually, at the end of the day, there's more chance of someone finding someone who doesn't know than finding someone who does. And that was so. Anyway, Alex, I keep on interrupting you. I feel really bad.
That's all right. That's all right. But no, there's a good point there. At the moment, the illegal market could be doing better for patients, and the legal market certainly could be doing better as well. But I think just to kind of round off on this point, so I think you've got these three stakeholder groups, and if you put a Venn diagram, the bit in the middle where they all cross over is a bit where a patient wants cannabis, the doctor's happy to prescribe it, and the regulatory framework is there. And at the moment, that crossover is tiny, and that's why you've only got 3,000 roughly medicinal cannabis patients in the UK in the legal market, and 1.5 million in the illegal market. So it's 99.something% hasn't transitioned yet. And so I see the role of that's why, as an organisation, I also look at the motivation of everybody that I'm dealing with, and people that become doctors are motivated to help people and to heal people. And that comes across in, the Hippocratic Oath from 2005 years ago to do no harm, and currently the principles of the GMC in the UK, which is to always put the care of the patient first. These people want to help patients, and therefore, the same for people in regulated, they actually care about safety, and so that's why they do the job. So, but clearly, we need to expand that point of crossover, so the majority of patients are able, or all patients are able, to access it in a legal way, and clinicians feel comfortable and empowered to do so, and that will happen. You've had people like Leon Barron on the show, who's a fantastic guy, and he's doing some great work. Sort of doing educational work and
Lovely.
Building a community of.
You're watching. Hi, Leon. Hey, buddy. He's probably not watching.
So I think people like Leon give me a lot of confidence that this demand and supply issue, because it is an issue, it will improve.
Yeah.
Of course, Alex, over the 21 years, my God. Lockdown, over the 21 weeks that Ollie and I have been doing the show, and Ollie finds all these amazing guests, one thing runs through as a constant stream and theme is that the people who are patients are impatient, which is very understandable. They're in pain, they're suffering, and the worst was when they're watching their children suffer, and it feels so horribly wrong.
I don't think impatience fair. I think they're being teased, because if you look at the world, everyone else seems to be getting it. So I get it. I understand from the patient perspective. Like, you look at your brothers and sisters across the world in different countries who seem to have access so much with such simplicity at such speed. So I feel like it's more of a frustration.
Right,
Yeah,
frustration.
impatience is the right word. You're actually right. You're bang on. You're bang on. I'm sorry for correcting you.
Because
My bad.
Don't be daft. But Alex, you know what's shocked me, because I came into this knowing zero, and every prejudice that I had and preconceived notion that I had has been thrown away and turned upside down. It's extraordinary. But we've had like an 81-year-old man who was
Tony,
who was told he was going to die. You know, we've had little moms with their little kids. We've had the most heartbreaking video of that baby having a fit. I mean, don't know how I kept it together watching that. So it covers every age group, and I just hope they can speed this along, because I just can't see if it's helping an 81-year-old man and preventing him from dying and giving him pain relief, if it's stopping a little tiny girl having these horrendous fits. Where's the harm? That's where I get frustrated. I get upset on behalf of our guests. And
this actually leads on perfectly to the next question. So, Alex, what are you going to do about it? Okay, what are you going to do about it? What's the actual plan? You know, I got the impression that it's more than just growing cannabis. Okay, you're not. So I've spent a lot of time with you and your partners. Okay, you know, I've sat with you, I've spoken to you over the phone. You know, like had little Zoom calls, saw the sheep in the background and in that green land behind you. Okay, so no, I mean, like we've had moments over, like from the beginning, from the first time I met you. You're not just a bunch of dudes trying to build a farm to sell cannabis, to sell out your farm. It's got more. It's more. There's more to you than the plant. There's more to you than the money. So like what's it all about? Because that's what I kind of felt. And I could be completely wrong. You could be all about the weed and all about the money, and good for you. That's all good. But I mean, I always felt every single time I felt like there was more. So I mean, like what's the actual plan for GLO?
Yes, so the why are we doing this? And Russ pretty much just summarized a lot of the main motivations. You know, our objective is to help people live better, and to help people live better by enabling access to a variety of high quality, consistent cannabis-based medicine, and a variety both in terms of the strains, which will have different types of cannabinoids and terpenes in them. So we're not just talking about THC and CBD, talking about a wider profile of cannabinoids which can have therapeutic value and terpenes, and also in a variety of delivery mechanisms as well. So people can use it in a way that is going to dovetail and tie in with their lifestyle and their demands, because we want people to help people live better, and then to do it in a way that is completely transparent, so that there is single batch origin on every medicinal product and complete transparency of the process that has been through. So that is the overriding objective or mission for the business, and we're very much patient focused. We've been doing research with patients, doing interviews. We have a research study on the website which is completely anonymous for people to tell us about how they're using cannabis at the moment.
Yeah, what's the link for that? What's the link for that? Is there a way of you like yeah, so basically the link will be posted on the video after the show. I don't know if there's a way of getting it up now, but I mean, like I'll get it on my Facebook, I'll get it on the Men's Radio page. If anyone's a patron, fill it out, please.
Yeah, thank you. So it's growlaborganics.com and /research. And so that's why we're doing it. But what is the plan? Well, it's a vertically integrated cannabis company. So vertically integrated just means you're involved in more than one phase of production. So we will be cultivating cannabis in very, very tightly controlled conditions, indoors, under lights, but with ethical and sustainable practices used wherever possible. And then we will be processing that cannabis in a EU GMP facility. So that's the regulations, the rules that you have to comply with. And those products can then be shipped wholesale or into finished products, which can be sold via a pharmacy to a patient with a prescription for that particular product. So we're vertically integrated in the supply stage from cultivation to finished products.
So, Alex, let me ask you this. By the way, you're resonating wonderfully. Veronica Curran, brilliant show as always. Thanks, guys. So, Alex, thank you. Ed Grossman, who's a very clever chap, says this, and it's something that I've discussed with Ollie on the show in past weeks. He says this, chaps, I'm totally with you, but I don't see any political party going much further than where we are right now. It just won't happen. And my argument, just to expand on that, is that the moment, any political party, if any persuasion says, right, this is what we're going to do with cannabis, you can just see there'd be such a pushback, and, the demonization would be horrendous. That is a big stumbling block.
It's been a bit of a political hot potato, but I think there's widespread support in the population. I think actually, if there was ever the stars were going to align for reform, I think it's now. Once again, I am very, very positive and optimistic generally in life, but I think it was Keir Starmer was asked about decriminalisation, and he did the standard political thing of dodging the question, but he basically said he was in favour of decriminalisation without using those words. And then the other main politician, Boris Johnson, he has said in interviews how he has smoked cannabis himself when he was at school and university. So I think that, and then if you move away
smoking
from
one of Boris's joints, can you imagine how? No.
So if we move away from all the things we've been talking about, if we look at it from another perspective, there is an economic incentive for doing this as well. And in a post-coronavirus world, that incentive is huge, because you've got the case studies now. You look at North America.
What about Ed Grossman again? We need a proposition vote like they do in California. That sounds something that was
or like they did in the Isle of Man.
By the way, I want to thank our producer Sinner for getting the graphics absolutely spot on. Thanks very much, Sinner. We don't often mention you, but he's there behind the scenes like a whirling
superstar,
machine. like a superstar whirling machine. What do you think about that? A proposition vote?
I would love that.
It would be a good idea. I mean, the vote in the Isle of Man was organised by the government, actually, Department for Enterprise. But yeah, it struck a chord with.
So it's very important to say this, okay, because this is important. Around 3 times a year, okay, so there is a law that if you write a petition and you get 50,000 signatures on the petition, it has to be seen in front of court, has to be seen in front of the House of Parliament. Okay, 3 times a year, there are petitions signed for a proposition regarding cannabis. They're not asking for legalization. They're not asking for a referendum. They're just asking for us to have the right to vote 3-4 times a year. Okay. And 3-4 times a year, they get their 50,000 signatures, and 3-4 times a year, it goes to the House of Parliament, and they're like, it's not enough. So I do agree with, mine's gone blank, but Ed, I do agree with Ed over what he just said, okay, that there is this brick wall in front of us. However, I also have to agree with Alex that if it's ever going to happen, it's going to be now. You've got a UK-based cannabis company which just sold for £5.3 million. You've got Israel. You've got Israel, which has just had
5.3 billion.
5.3 billion. You've got the London Stock Exchange, which is IPOing cannabis companies from around the world and doubling and tripling their share price. Not any other stock exchange, the London Stock Exchange. So we're doing that. You've got CBD businesses. We are the CBD hub of Europe. There are more CBD companies in the UK than there are in Europe combined. Okay. I mean, it's just, you've got like 2,000 different CBD companies here now. I mean, if anyone's going to do it, and there's ever going to be a time to do it, now should be that time. What I don't understand, though, is how they're going to do it. So right now, there is legal cannabis. There is legal medicinal cannabis in the UK. Like, you can go to Drug Science, you can go to Project 2021 Drug Science, and you can get a prescription and have a consultation, just like Philip did. It costs about £400 to £500, but it's completely doable. And then your prescription will cost you whatever it costs you on a monthly basis. The issue is, though, with that prescription, it's limited. So you either get cannabis flowers, which you have to vape, or you get a drop, like a type of tongue drop. the application of cannabinoids is so much more vast. You can make suppositories, you can make balms, you can make lotions, you can make creams, you can make a range of different capsules in a range of different blends and a range of different ratios. I have a question. Has the Isle of Man spoken about what sort of product manufacturing is going to allow, or is the Isle of Man going to be very similar to the rest of the UK, which limits the types of products which patients can have?
So the Isle of Man regulatory framework is not prescriptive to what products that you can make, but the products that will be made, everything that's done that medicine is made will be that falls really under the domain of the MHRA, because they regulate the pharmaceutical side of things. So the production processes will get audited by them, and I think to your point, Ollie, that if we think that medicinal cannabis has been legal in the UK since just over 2 years now, November 2018, and in that time there's still this massive tension. People aren't able to access it that should be able to. However, if you look the first year, very little happened in the market, but in the last year there are signs of improvement in the supply chain. So you've now got, I think, 6 clinics.
A lot of universities are backing this as well, which means the education is now being pushed. And you've got medicinal facilities which are also, investing time. You've got King's Medical School, and you've got, like these other like Imperial Medical School and Nottingham Medical School. They have small studies going on into cannabis, which is pretty cool. That wasn't happening 3, 4, 5 years ago in the way it's happening today. So hopefully the education will educate. Do you know what I mean? That's the hope. So the supply chain will improve, and access will improve, and choice and diversity of products, I believe, will improve as well. The patients you have spoken to are a lot of them on the legal system?
It's a mix. We talk to people from people that are legal medicinal cannabis patients in the UK, people taking from the black market, people from other countries around the world to give insights from how it works there, and it's all completely anonymous, and it's really just about learning.
Who seemed the happiest out of all of your communications? Who seems, because I've got my idea. Of course, it's very it's very personal, but I mean, like, who seemed the most satisfied? Did the legal patient seem satisfied from your perspective? Did the illegal patient seem satisfied? Or was there more of a, I wish I could go back to the black market, or I wish I can go to a legal market? Like, what was the general tone? Because that's also never really discussed. And I'm just curious as to where people actually find themselves. I know Tony Bevington hated having to grow because it was long, and he's happy that he gets to buy a bottle and survive off it. But I mean, like, what have you seen from your interactions with people?
So we've found that generally there is some dissatisfaction with all groups at the moment. So everyone would like the situation to be better, irrespective of whether they're sourcing illegally or legally. And there's still friction in the marketplace, and that therein lies, I think, the exciting opportunity, because that's what we and other companies as well are motivated to do to improve that. I think probably people that are in more developed markets are a bit happy because they've got more choice. So that's the US predominantly.
There's a comment here from Ed Grossman as we run up to the end of the show. It says, Oliver, we really need to take some MPs to LA and show them that the shops there, they're not dingy, they are above board, and they're a pleasure.
No, 1,000,000%. Some of the dispensaries in California. Idea. I mean, like some of the shops in California. I mean, they're like, it's like walking into Apple. I mean, like, it's just the nicest store you've ever been in your life, and it's incredible. Like, I completely agree. I also believe that the system in Israel needs to be seen more. I believe that To be honest with you, every cannabis system around the world has its benefits and has its negatives. To be honest with you, I want to see what Alex and his boys come up with, because I personally think that, that there's something special there. And coming from a patient perspective is also very rare. A lot of people in this industry, unfortunately, do go after the money. It's more of a fashion thing, because in the fashion side of this business, the recreational side, there's a lot more money. Patient care is, you have, except for GW Pharmaceuticals, most of the big cannabis companies who have sold are not patient-focused companies. They're recreational-focused companies. And it's also important to understand that, the cannabis market is not divided, but it's camped. It has its own, it has different groups within it. And I am interested to see from a patient perspective what Alex and his boys do, because that's why they're setting up.
And on that, we've almost got to leave it. Alex Frey, thank you so much for being our guest today. Ollie, bravo, as always, for finding these amazing people that you do.
They're awesome,
every
man.
week. They are all absolutely most extraordinary people. This is Men's Radio Station. We'll see you same time next week. Bye-bye.